Tiffany Henyard's tenure as mayor of Dalton, Illinois began with a sense of historic optimism. Her election as the town's first female mayor marked a new era for the predominantly black community of 20,000, a moment of progress, promise, and the hope for transformative leadership. But that hope has since unraveled, replaced by mounting controversy, political chaos, and a growing storm that now engulfs nearly every aspect of the town's government. What began as a breakthrough for representation and reform has spiraled into a scandal-plagued administration, one marred by allegations of corruption, financial mismanagement, and the troubling consolidation of power. Today, Tiffany Henyard stands at the center of a governance crisis as scrutiny deepens and public outrage escalates. One of the defining moments in her controversial leadership came in September when she appointed Ronald Burge as Dalton's police chief. The move sparked immediate backlash, not just because it bypassed the required approval from the village board of trustees, but because Burge lacked the legal qualifications to even hold the position. According to the Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board, Burge was deemed inactive, failing to complete mandatory training and certification. Without these credentials, he couldn't legally perform basic police duties, let alone lead an entire department. Yet despite this revelation, Henyard remained unmoved. She refused to rescind the appointment, further reinforcing perceptions that her administration was driven by loyalty rather than legality or competence. For a community already anxious about public safety, the Burge controversy sent shockwaves. Residents voiced growing frustration over slow emergency response times and a rising crime rate. The appointment became more than just a misstep. It became a symbol of something bigger, a government operating without checks, without balance, and without accountability. Critics argue that Henyard's leadership style favors control over collaboration and personal loyalty over public service. Her repeated clashes with governance norms haven't just disrupted the village's institutions. They've left residents questioning if their voices are even being heard. But the controversy doesn't stop there. Henyard has also been accused of gross financial mismanagement, including the alleged misuse of public funds for personal luxury. Investigations uncovered excessive spending on travel and high-end accommodations, with records showing over $171,000 in travel expenses and more than $48,000 in Amazon purchases charged to village credit cards. These weren't items essential to village operations. They included electronics, high-end consumer goods, and personal luxuries. Once operating with a multi-million-dollar surplus, Dalton's financial health has taken a dramatic downturn. Reports show the village plummeted from a $4.95 million surplus in 2022 to a $5.68 million deficit by mid-2024, and the situation worsens. Henyard failed to properly allocate or account for over $3 million in American Rescue Plan funds, a direct violation of federal guidelines that has drawn further scrutiny and potential legal consequences. While the village struggles to fund essential services, her fiscal decisions have raised serious red flags. Meanwhile, her public image has done little to ease tensions. Described by many as combative, theatrical, and increasingly disconnected, Henyard's behavior has only amplified concerns. She has reportedly used village police officers as a personal security detail, blurring the lines between official resources and personal protection. Her public appearances, often marked by bold fashion choices likened to gangster film characters, have been seen by many as mockery rather than leadership. What may have once been headline-grabbing moments have now become symbols of chaos. Tiffany Henyard's bold public displays and dramatic speeches may have once captivated audiences, but to many in Dalton, they now feel like distractions, a political theater overshadowing the real, urgent problems: crumbling infrastructure, deepening poverty, and stalled economic progress. Her fiery public addresses, often dismissing criticism as politically driven, have done little to restore the trust of a frustrated community. And her continued refusal to follow established board protocols has only widened the gap between her office and the officials who were elected to govern alongside her. The controversial appointment of Ronald Burge was just one in a string of decisions. made without consulting the Dalton Village Board, a pattern that's come to define Henyard's unilateral style of leadership. What may have once been headline-grabbing moments have now become symbols of chaos. Tiffany Henyard's bold public displays and dramatic speeches may have once captivated audiences, but to many in Dalton, they now feel like distractions. A political theater overshadowing the real, urgent problems: crumbling infrastructure, deepening poverty, and stalled economic progress. Her fiery public addresses, often dismissing criticism as politically driven, have done little to restore the trust of a frustrated community, and her continued refusal to follow established board protocols has only widened the gap between her office and the officials who were elected to govern alongside her. The controversial appointment of Ronald Burge was just one in a string of decisions, made without consulting the Dalton Village Board, a pattern that's come to define Henyard's unilateral style of leadership. In response, the board pushed back, passing a resolution calling for a federal investigation into the mayor's administration. Trustees have publicly accused Henyard of corruption and gross mismanagement, expressing deep concern that her approach to power has made effective governance nearly impossible. With the board's attempts to check her authority repeatedly ignored, residents are now left wondering, does any accountability remain at all? Outside agencies have begun to take notice. According to reports, the FBI has issued subpoenas for employee and business records from Dalton Village Hall, signaling a possible expansion of what appears to be a growing investigation into corruption and misuse of funds. The legal consequences for Henyard's administration may no longer be hypothetical, they may be imminent. Still, Henyard maintains her innocence, continuing to dismiss the allegations as part of a partisan smear campaign. But the evidence, and the anger, continues to mount. What some once saw as political gamesmanship is now viewed by many as a community-wide cry for help. The toll of Henyard's leadership isn't theoretical. It's felt daily by the residents of Dalton. Delays in emergency services, failing infrastructure, a near standstill in economic development. These aren't just policy failures, they're personal. And for many, they are unforgivable. The very community that once saw Henyard as a beacon of change now feels trapped in a cycle of dysfunction and scandal. Even some of her early supporters, those who once believed in her vision, are finding it harder to defend her. They're not just struggling against a narrative, they're confronting a reality. The controversy and political infighting have brought progress in the village to a near halt. And now, with federal investigations underway and the potential for criminal charges looming, the future of Dalton and of Henyard's administration hangs in the balance. Can she continue to lead a town engulfed in crisis? Or will new leadership be required to rebuild the trust and structure that's been so thoroughly eroded? What's clear is this: public trust is at an all-time low. Residents are no longer asking, politely, they're demanding answers, transparency, and real accountability. Whether or not that's possible under Henyard's leadership remains uncertain. But the calls for change are only growing louder. What started as a historic milestone has turned into a cautionary tale, a story not just of missed opportunity, but of broken promises and unchecked power. Henyard's time in office has shaken the foundation of Dalton's local government and raised urgent questions about the standards we expect from our leaders and the systems meant to hold them accountable. As the legal pressure mounts and tensions in the village reach a boiling point, one thing is undeniable. Tiffany Henyard's administration is under fire, not just politically, but morally and legally. Her controversial appointment of Ronald Burge, despite his disqualifications, has become more than just a staffing issue. It's a symbol of a broader crisis in leadership. Even with scrutiny from legal bodies and outcry from officials, Henyard refused to step back. To many, her unwavering defense of Burge wasn't a show of principle. It was about consolidating loyalty and political control. Her critics argue that the police department wasn't being led, it was being politicized. The backlash intensified when it was revealed that Henyard had bypassed the village board to appoint Burge, a clear violation of Dalton's governance structure. In response, a judge issued a restraining order to block Burge from officially taking office until the board could review and vote. Still, Henyard stood her ground. Instead of reconsidering, she doubled down, further isolating herself from both residents and board members already outraged by her continued defiance of procedure. Throughout the ordeal, she portrayed herself as a victim, targeted, attacked, misunderstood. But as more accusations emerged and public frustration turned to fury, that defense began to lose power. The damage wasn't just political, it cut deeper, striking at the core of public trust. At a time when Dalton was already struggling, with budget shortfalls, underfunded schools, and decaying public services, the town needed leadership, not spectacle. Mayor Tiffany Henyard's leadership has not only strained Dalton's already fragile systems, it has pulled them closer to collapse. As state and federal agencies, including the Illinois Attorney General's Office and the FBI, reportedly widen their investigations, the allegations against Henyard continue to stack up. Financial mismanagement, misuse of taxpayer money, and a series of questionable political appointments. Each new revelation chips away at what little credibility remains, while public faith in her leadership plummets. Now, Henyard stands at a critical crossroads. With the village's future hanging in the balance, residents are asking the hard question, is she capable of leading Dalton back from the brink, or will her continued presence only drive the town deeper into dysfunction? What began as a historic milestone, the election of Dalton's first female mayor, has unraveled into a deeply divisive administration, defined by scandal, resistance to oversight, and a long trail of avoidable mistakes. The Ronald Burge controversy, while explosive on its own, is only one chapter in a much larger and more troubling narrative. It reflects the broader dysfunction that has plagued Henyard's administration from the start, a pattern of governance that prioritizes personal loyalty over qualifications and spectacle over substance. Dalton residents, many of whom once believed in Henyard's promises of reform, now find themselves caught in a political storm with no clear path forward. They've watched a hopeful vision for their town devolve into confusion, conflict, and chaos. The investigations continue. And so do the questions. Can the town heal? Can trust be restored? Or is the damage too deep to reverse? Despite growing pressure, Henyard remains determined to stay in power. But her refusal to acknowledge mistakes or adjust course has only intensified the tension. Recent village board meetings have become battlegrounds, marked by heated exchanges, walkouts, and a community that feels increasingly unheard. In a temporary ruling, the courts allowed Burge to serve as interim police chief for 30 days while the board searched for a permanent replacement. Even this short-lived appointment sparked fierce backlash. Burge still lacked the training and certification required under Illinois law, a fact critics said was ignored simply to serve Henyard's political interests. To them, Burge wasn't hired to protect Dalton. He was installed to protect Henyard. That decision, they argue, fits a broader trend, an administration that rewards loyalty over merit and rules not with service in mind, but with self-preservation at the forefront. As the controversy surrounding Burge escalated, more allegations began surfacing, including reports of misused public funds, lavish travel spending, luxury purchases on village credit cards, and the improper use of municipal staff for personal errands. The pattern was clear. One scandal after another, all under Henyard's watch. Dalton, already reeling from underfunded services, rising crime rates, and a shrinking economy, is now facing a full-blown leadership crisis. The town's problems aren't just mounting, they're multiplying. Even Henyard's former allies have begun to distance themselves, publicly voicing concerns over her judgment and decision-making. But instead of taking accountability, Henyard has taken a defiant stance, dismissing critics as enemies, doubling down on divisive rhetoric, and shifting blame away from her office. This refusal to accept responsibility has deepened the rift in Dalton's political landscape, destabilizing an already fragile government and leaving many residents questioning whether any hope remains for effective leadership. The Burge appointment wasn't a one-off mistake. It was a symptom of a much deeper problem. The kind of problem that doesn't just erode public trust, but destroys it. For many in Dalton, it was the final straw. With multiple investigations underway, trust at an all-time low, and no roadmap forward, the town is at a tipping point. Whether it can recover from the damage inflicted during Henyard's time in office remains uncertain. But what is certain? The people of Dalton are demanding change. They want transparency, they want accountability, and most of all, they want leadership that puts the town first. Dalton in crisis. Tiffany Henyard under mounting scrutiny. Mayor Tiffany Henyard's administration has reached a boiling point. Her style of leadership, marked by unilateral decisions, controversial appointments, and unchecked spending, is now under intense scrutiny from both residents and investigators. From ignoring established governance processes to facing accusations of funneling public resources for personal benefit, Henyard stands at the center of a storm that grows stronger by the day. Federal investigators are digging deep into her financial records and the alleged misuse of village resources, and while Dalton continues to struggle with rising crime, collapsing infrastructure, and a stagnant economy, many residents say their mayor is too focused on political survival to address the town's real problems. At the heart of the latest uproar is Henyard's appointment of Ronald Burge as police chief, a decision that violated state law and was made without board approval. Burge lacked the proper certification and training required to serve in Illinois. The move triggered a legal battle and ultimately a court order blocking his appointment. Still, Henyard refused to back down. She framed the criticism as a partisan effort to undermine her, but to many in Dalton, her defense rang hollow. They saw it as yet another attempt to deflect from poor judgment, another example of how loyalty, not qualifications, guides her decisions. The sentiment has grown darker. One resident even compared her inner circle politics to the tactics of a mob boss, an extreme analogy perhaps, but one that speaks volumes about the public's growing distrust. And Burge is not an isolated case. Henyard has a track record of placing allies, some with questionable backgrounds, in key positions throughout the village, including within the police force. These appointments have sparked serious concerns about competence, transparency, and the overall direction of Dalton's government at a time when strong, capable leadership is most needed. The Burge scandal in particular has only widened the gap between Henyard and the community. Prior to his appointment in Dalton, Burge had served in other municipalities like Dixmoor and Harvey, where his performance and professional conduct were also called into question. Ronald Burge's appointment as police chief, already marred by controversy, became even more alarming as deeper layers of his past came to light. Burge, who served as chief in towns like Dixmoor and Harvey, had faced multiple lawsuits involving allegations of political retaliation and employment misconduct. In fact, he had been named in at least 4 legal cases in recent years. For many Dalton residents, his selection wasn't just questionable, it was baffling. Why would Mayor Henyard place someone with such a checkered record in one of the town's most critical positions? The answer, critics say, lies not in Burge's qualifications, but in his loyalty. As the scandal escalates and investigations widen, Dalton residents are left asking hard questions. Can the damage be undone? Will Henyard ever acknowledge the fallout from her decisions, or will her relentless defiance continue tearing the community apart? Dalton's political structure is teetering, and the town stands at a pivotal moment. While a few supporters still argue Henyard's boldness is a necessary disruption, the overwhelming evidence paints a different picture, one of leadership driven by control, secrecy, and political favoritism. This isn't disruption. This is dysfunction. Dalton's fate now hinges on whether its leadership can rise to meet the crisis, or whether Henyard's legacy will be one of missed opportunities, deepening mistrust, and lasting turmoil. The fallout of the Burge appointment. Dalton under siege. The political firestorm surrounding Ronald Burge's appointment continues to rage in Dalton, Illinois. Despite mounting pressure and undeniable legal barriers, Mayor Tiffany Henyard remains firm in her decision to install Burge as police chief, a move that has rocked the town to its core. According to the Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board, Burge is legally unqualified to serve as a police officer in the state, yet, in defiance of established law and without the approval of the Dalton Village Board of Trustees, Henyard appointed him anyway, sparking legal battles and deepening an already volatile political crisis. Critics say this is no accident. It's a calculated move, part of a broader strategy to consolidate power by surrounding herself with hand-picked loyalists. The message is clear: allegiance over competence, obedience over merit. Many in Dalton now believe Henyard governs not as a public servant, but as a political operator, a leader more concerned with controlling the narrative than addressing the town's urgent needs. The rift between Henyard and the village board has widened dramatically. When the ILTSB issued an official letter stating that Burge did not meet the legal requirements to serve, the board prepared to return to court, using the letter as key evidence in a renewed effort to legally block Burge from holding any leadership role. What began as a personnel dispute has now become symbolic of something far greater: the crumbling foundations of local governance. Dalton is in crisis, crime is rising, infrastructure is crumbling, financial oversight has collapsed, and the business environment teeters on the edge of disaster. Residents say their voices have been drowned out, their concerns ignored by an administration more focused on loyalty than results. Burge's record, already riddled with lawsuits and controversies, has only fueled the public's anger. His past tenures in neighboring towns sparked similar outcry, raising serious doubts about Henyard's judgment in choosing him to lead a struggling police department. Her unwavering support of Burge, in the face of public outrage, legal red flags, and mounting community backlash, has led many to question her priorities, and for some, it's led to even harsher comparisons. Critics now describe Henyard's leadership as authoritarian, pointing to massive billboards around town bearing her face, branding them as self-promotional propaganda. Her public appearances, often theatrical and provocative, have left residents feeling like they're watching a performance, not governance. They say Dalton has become a political stage, with Henyard at the center of a never-ending spectacle. This obsession with image and drama has pushed many residents to the breaking point. They're exhausted, frustrated, and desperate for change. The battle ahead, Dalton at a turning point. As Dalton's next mayoral election approaches, the town finds itself staring down a crossroads. Trustee Jason House, now a challenger to Henyard, is running on a platform built around three urgent promises: reform, accountability, and transparency, and people are listening. House has pledged to clean up what he calls the mess left behind by Henyard's administration. He promises to restore order, integrity, and professionalism to a government that, in his words, has lost its moral compass. But Henyard isn't backing down. She's announced her re-election campaign, and in a bold, polarizing move, compared herself to former President Donald Trump. She claims she'll win in a landslide, despite the scandals engulfing her tenure. The question now isn't just whether Henyard can stay in office, it's whether Dalton can survive another term under her leadership. With legal proceedings ramping up, the outcome of the Burge investigation still uncertain, and trust in government at an all-time low, Dalton's future hangs in the balance. The town's once hopeful vision has been replaced by division, dysfunction, and a deep sense of betrayal.